I am really excited to be here. I am the director of strategy and mission for our summit team, and I love the things that focus on the SANS mission, which is to build a stronger, more inclusive workforce. And so I'm really excited to be here with the panelists. I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a second, but the WESIS Neurodiversity Affiliate is doing great work. I love everything that Kat and Nathan talked about, including the accessibility for speakers. So this group of panelists has a little bit of a different perspective on doing public speaking. And so we're going to get into that. Brandon, you were actually my inspiration for this whole topic. So I will have you go first with introductions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Evans. I'm a certified SANS instructor, as well as the course author for Sec 510, Public Cloud Security, AWS, Azure, and GCP. I do a lot of other things, including I am the host of the SANS Cloud ACE podcast, which Stacy was actually a guest for. And I'm here to talk to you about my storied history as a public speaker and how I've had struggles as well related to acute panic attacks.
All right, let's kick it to Stacy.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Stacy Dunn. I'm a senior solutions engineer at SANS. Wow, here we go. Starting off real strong, real great. So anywho, you got to roll with it. That's my first bit of advice for you. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I do identify as neurodivergent. I have ADHD as well as general anxiety disorder, chronic depression, and some other various things. So I enjoy drawing, painting, writing, playing video games, reading comic books, doing yoga and powerlifting. So you all know a little bit about me.
All right, and Megan.
Hey everyone, my name is Megan. I am a co-author of an instructor in development for SANS 4509, Enterprise Cloud Forensics and IR. And during the day, I'm an engineer at IBM. I'm joining this panel because I've been doing public speaking for most of my cybersecurity career and even before that. And I've been doing it despite my own challenges with autism and ADHD. So I'm looking forward to speaking today, sharing some of the things I do to get past those hurdles.
That's great. So Brandon said something interesting to me. Actually, all of the panelists kind of pointed out when I said, hey, everyone's scared of public speaking. It can be really overwhelming. And they all, I'm not that scared of it. I've kind of learned how to do it. So we are hoping to encourage people so that you know public speaking is a possibility and there's no reason that you should hold yourself back from it. And you might see somebody like Megan or Stacy or Brandon doing one of these conference talks and you just figure, well, they're just naturals. That's a skill some people are born with. I wasn't born with that. But Brandon, what do you think about that when somebody says you're such a natural?
If anything, I am naturally predisposed to not be good at public speaking. And this is something that I think is kind of frustrating is with any skill set, at least in the technical field, people say, oh, you have to study and apply and do all of this work. Like no one expects anybody to be a fantastic mathematician or software engineer at birth. But the people who do public speaking, oh, they're just born with it. You can't learn public speaking. And to me, it's so frustrating because although you see me speak at SANS events and at courses, I've been doing this for quite some time now. I did a lot in college and I really had to build up the confidence that I use today in order to overcome some of the difficulties that I have surrounding anxiety. But even thousands of hours past then, I still do occasionally have acute panic attacks where my hands get sweaty and my vision blurs. And, you know, I've learned some tactics to deal with that. And one of those tactics is just to build up confidence. And also you can build up that skill set by repeatedly working on the skill set. It's not something that anybody's born with, in my opinion.
So Megan, when I proposed this topic to you, you said, yeah, I'll do the panel with you, but I don't have a lot to add because I kind of like public speaking. So what do you think about that? Do you think you were just born with it?
Oh, no, I'm the same. I'm here where I am because I learned it. I actually, when I was in middle school, high school, so like my preteens, I through my school, specialized school was sent through Toastmasters. So I actually had speaking classes in my teens that kind of started me there. And so there you see, like, when I was learning, they had to tell me a lot of things that I didn't know, and I got all this feedback. So I started off as a weak speaker learning these skills. And then even if you go back now, if you were to go on YouTube and choose one of my talks from 2017, when I first talked at a cybersecurity conference, to this panel or any other talk recently, it's just miles apart, the difference. Like, I still cringe at myself to watch replays. I can rarely ever watch one of my old talks because I'm like, oh, it was so bad. But like, I'm growing as I do it more and more and more. And so that's one of the things I do is like, just keep doing it. You get more and more comfortable with every time. So it's definitely not something where, yeah, the first time I stepped on stage, I was just there. I had these skills. It is everything I've been learning since my preteens.
So you mentioned Toastmasters, which I think is a fantastic resource. Will you talk just a little bit more about that for anybody who doesn't know what Toastmasters is?
Yeah, so Toastmasters is like it's like a global organization type thing that you do. They have a lot of meetups locally. You go, you're expected to give a presentation of different styles, different topics that you have. So mine was all a bunch of homeschool students, and sometimes it'd be a 15-minute fire talk on a hobby. Sometimes it would be a 20-minute speech on someone who's inspired me. These various topics, everyone does it. Then the other students, the Toastmasters, the people who are running it, they go ahead and they give you feedback. This is what you could have worked on. This is what you did well, etc. And actually related to that, same thing for SANS. Like, a lot of people don't see in the background with SANS, like how much is put into our instructors' development for speaking. So I have instructors and I have talent managers watching me teach and saying, hey, you did this good, but here you did this, here you said this, let's try and work on that. So that feedback loop that both Toastmasters or programs like SANS has given me a big deal. But Toastmasters, it is pretty global, or at least in the US, there's lots of chapters. So it's a great group if you want to practice those speaking skills and get constructive criticism back if you feel like you need that feedback.
So that is a great resource. That's a great way to practice. And Stacy, you have done something that I think is a really smart way to build some public speaking skills. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so to answer the question of was I born with it, I would say yes and no. And I would add that, you know, to piggyback off what everyone else is saying, it's like anything else. You do have to learn it. You have to practice. You have to like really try and get good at it. And the different types of things that I've done to get better at presenting, one of which, this is completely out of the realm of, you know, what is professional, but stand-up comedy was something that really, really helped enforce my ability to present in front of people. Because I don't know if any of you have ever been heckled before, for example, but boy, oh boy, does that really prepare you and kind of get rid of that nervousness that you might feel too. And one of the things that I like to fall back on when I present is being comedic anyway. It's kind of my comfort zone too. So if you're in front of a lot of people and you're going out there with the intention of making them laugh and then they don't, it's just like, well, there we go. I guess I didn't do that. But then you learn from it, right? You try to figure out who your audience is. You try to work the crowd in different ways, try to find different ways to relate to them. So that was kind of an unconventional way that helped build me up and really like fortify my ability to speak.
That's amazing. So Brandon, you touched on the anxiety and panic attacks and breathing techniques. And so I wonder if you can go a little bit deeper into that, into some of the things that help you, especially from a psychosomatic perspective of, you know, calming yourself down with the physical reactions that you experience.
Yeah, so I think that this is also related to a symptom that many people might have called intrusive thoughts. And this is when you think about things that could potentially go wrong and you overly fixate on this. And I've talked to professionals about this subject, and it seems that that kind of thought process comes about due to evolutionary biology, that in order to be on high alert, in order to deal with all of the dangers of the world, the natural world, we have to be really focusing on things like, hey, is there a tiger out to eat me, for example? And some people have an issue where they overly fixate on that to the point where they think that they are going to sabotage themselves, where they say, oh, there's a tiger, I'm probably going to run right into its mouth. And similarly, I think the same way when I'm public speaking. I say, I really want to make sure that I have a good time here and that all of the people watching this presentation are going to have a good time. So I should definitely just say a lot of really offensive things in order to sabotage myself and mess up my career, or just say things that are wrong, or get into an argument with a student. And I think about this because I'm overly fixated on the things that are dangers to me, to the point that I materialize them. So understanding this and using deep breathing exercises can affect the way that you think about this and really calm yourself down from this. And as my mantra, the mantra that I've had to myself is, there is no tiger. There is no tiger. There's no reason to think that this is going to come up and eat you.
That's fantastic. So Megan, you have a very cool hobby when you're not being an information security professional. And so I would imagine you know a thing or two about calming your physical nerves. Do you want to talk about what you do outside of work?
Yeah, so what Jennifer is referring to, and she actually came in person to one of my events, which was super cool, is I fight Muay Thai and kickboxing in my spare time. So that's my hobby on the side. And I realized I actually started fighting after I started speaking, but I definitely realized that like that relationship of how they both kind of impact each other, because when I started fighting, everyone talked about the like essentially stage fright, that nerves of being under the spotlight in a ring, dozens of people, if not hundreds, looking at you and what you're doing and all that time. And I just never felt those nerves. I was like, well, like for me, when I get in a ring and I'm fighting, my brain is only focused on me and the person in front of me. I can't be too worried about the people off in the audience when there's punches being thrown at me. When I go on stage and speak, I'm staring at a crowd who are focused on me, looking at me. I'm trying to keep eye contact. I can see how they're reacting. And so it's kind of that it made me realize that kind of regardless though of being speaking or performing or athletics, you're in a room full of people and you kind of have to like just focus on what you can control. And so for me, it allowed me to block out the audience when I'm fighting because I'm just focused on what's happening in the ring. And when I'm when I'm speaking, you know, it goes the opposite way. Now, okay, well, at least I'm not getting punched in the face. This is pretty easy. Like, yeah, there's still 60 people in front of me, but you know, I don't have to worry about getting knocked out in front of them. So it's just that thing. It also, again, like you said, there's that physical aspect. So doing a sport, being able to have that mind-body connection of keeping control of my thoughts and how they might affect me physically, vice versa. So it's definitely surprisingly something that I think helps with my public speaking in terms of just performing in front of a crowd.
Well, Megan did not get knocked out. She won the fight that I went to see, which was very exciting.
I did.
Also, I feel like it's a big win that Ashton got the "there is no tiger" soundbite and is also making us a very cute tiger
Yes.
that we want to make stickers out of. So Megan, you just said something interesting that I want to follow up on for any of the three of you who want to answer this. So you said something about speaking and making eye contact. And so obviously as a person with autism, eye contact can sometimes be a thing that, you know, people are not that comfortable with.
Yeah.
So for any of you, when you are talking to a crowd in person, do you have a strategy of, you know, pick the friend in the front row and make eye contact with her or anything like that?
So for me, it's actually funny is it was something I realized and I tell people is honestly, I'd rather give a presentation to 50 people than be one-on-one with a single person, partially being that eye contact, that one thing. And for me, it isn't pick a point and focus on it. It's the opposite. It's like, I don't have to look at one person. Like I can look around the room. That's what I'm expected to do, is kind of pass. So I can look at someone if I'm kind of uncomfortable with that moment of eye contact. Okay, just change my eyes, move somewhere else now. I can look at a point in the room. I don't have to physically be looking at a person, because if I'm looking at that empty chair, no one else knows I'm looking at an empty chair. They just assume I'm looking at someone else in that moment. So it's actually more of like, I naturally want to move my eyes all over the place. And so speaking in front of a crowd of people allows me to do that. And so it's actually more comfortable for me from an eye contact perspective.
Stacey or Brandon, do you have any other kind of physical things that you use in person? Like Brandon, I can tell that you're at a standing desk and you're pretty active while you're doing this. Is that something that you find helpful? Is that part of your teaching style when you're standing in front of a classroom?
Actually, it's definitely not something I actively do. This is more of just fidgeting, and I don't necessarily do it consciously, but in person, I do move around because that actually does engage people better if you're speaking on their side of the room or another person's side on the room. Regarding eye contact, it's actually really funny because I get a lot of benefit from someone making eye contact with me. That's my best friend, is whenever I have someone looking directly in my eye and nodding, I'm going to look to them at least every 2 minutes to be like, yup, I'm still making sense. I'm still connecting with the audience. That's fantastic. So not quite as big of a problem for me, but I also don't think it is necessarily necessary to overly fixate on eye contact. I don't think it's as important as people make it out to be in public speaking, at least. But in one-to-one communications, I can understand why it's emphasized a little bit more.
Stacey, what do you think about that?
I think I kind of fall under the same category as Megan here as well, where it's like, I don't focus on anything or anyone in particular. I kind of see it as this like amorphous blob. I don't really know how else to put it, where it's just like, there are people out there, I can recognize it. I can look at various faces, but not for too long or anything like that. So I know, as Brandon had mentioned, that you are getting at least some of that visual or facial feedback. That's kind of the thing I focus on whenever it comes to a crowd or presenting, especially in person, because whenever you have lights blasting in your face, that's, you can't really always see anyone either. So it's, depending on the venue or the circumstances, it can change. So I don't try to focus on one thing in case that thing is not there.
So Stacey, you said something great when we were doing our prep call. So you said, you know, I kind of am not that nervous once I get started. Maybe I'm just masking for my whole presentation. But then you also said, it's like I become somebody else, like I'm a presentation werewolf. Yes. And so, you know, hopefully Ashton's going to give us a presentation werewolf, because that's amazing. But so do you kind of feel like, hey, there's just something that takes me over when I get started?
I do. And I've been thinking more about that and whether or not that I feel like it's a form of masking. And as I thought through it, I almost feel like it's more of being myself, but an amplified version of myself. Whenever I'm about to go into a presentation, it does feel like I transform a little bit, but it's more like I'm elevated or heightened or just amplified in some way, to where I lean into my eccentricities, or I lean into the things that I think make me a fun or exciting person. And I just let that kind of take over as opposed to anything else.
So for anybody who's kind of new to the way that we talk about neurodiversity, can you expand on masking and what we mean when we say that?
Yeah, so masking is whenever you kind of, I don't know, it's like you're wearing a mask in front of other people. You're hiding some of those things that you might have that quote unquote make you ADHD or autistic or neurodiverse, because, you know, whenever you do have those different qualities, they're not always qualities that other people are as accepting as. And that's exactly why we're having this summit, for example. We want to make sure that the things that we do, the things that we feel, and our behaviors are acceptable. So masking can be at times a way that someone can kind of, you know, put on a face, do the things they feel they need to do in that moment. And then, you know, maybe at the end of the day, you take it off. But I don't want to necessarily encourage masking per se, but I did want to, you know, kind of talk about it a little bit, because I do feel sometimes when I get into meetings that just inevitably happens.
So somebody in the Zoom said stand-up is great, and was curious whether any of you have done improv classes, because that's just such a great way to build strong skills. And then it's funny because Steph and I were actually talking yesterday about how our style as public speakers is more improvisational. Like I want to know sort of what we're talking about, but then I really just want it to flow and feel really organic. So I'm curious from any of you kind of what your strategies are if you know you have a presentation. How do you balance preparation versus being spontaneous and coming across as being really authentic, also keeping track of time and sticking to deadlines, because there's a lot that goes into, you know, you showing up and talking for 35 minutes somewhere.
In terms of doing improv courses, I've done one and it was a lot of fun, but not something I've stuck to. I wish I was a comedian like Stacy, but not quite there. But in terms of my preparation style, I do something that's, I think, kind of interesting, which is for really important talks, I script out like every single word, like down to the punctuation. And if I'm doing this online, this is really easy. But what I've taught myself how to do is how to read something naturally so that people cannot tell that I'm doing that. Now, if I do that presentation a couple of times, I no longer have to have that in front of me. I've done it so many times that it becomes quote unquote muscle memory. So that's one strategy that I personally use. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to that question.
Yeah, and I can,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I can add to that too. I wanted to address something in the chat I see here as well, asking about two different things. Someone had asked about blinking during a presentation, and then another one was asking about fixating on speaking later that day and struggle to get anything done. Yes, absolutely. That was me today in a lot of ways. What I like to do in terms of preparation is I like to over prepare, and I also like to pretend that I'm a novelist, that I'm going to tell a story. I like to think about what points I want to get across, what character I want to be in that moment, what do I want to convey, how do I want people to feel, what do I want them to take away from everything. So I think those are the ways that I prepare. I will do bullets. I might even write a script sometimes, so I have something to fall back on in case I do just completely blank. And in terms of the improv part, I haven't taken any classes, but I try to at least memorize, if you could think of it like chapters. I try to memorize the chapters of my talk, like those key points, those areas that I know I'm going to touch on. That way I can kind of go through that mental list of where I think I should be in that moment.
Megan, did you want to add anything on that topic?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm kind of opposite of Brandon. I'm kind of the one who like wings it in a way. Like that sounds almost like a bad thing, but like I guess I'm kind of like closer to Stacy. Like I make sure that I feel knowledgeable in my subject area, because that's what's gonna make me sound like an expert, is I know it. And if I know it, because I don't get the nerves from speaking, like some people, they do want to prep because of those nerves going into speaking. Like for Brandon, that's how he like balances out some of the anxiety of he knows he's going in for it. For me, I don't get the anxiety going into speaking. So for me, just being confident that I know the subject matter and knowing those high level points, that's how I prepare. I don't like go, this is what I'm going to say here, here, and here. I go, okay, this slide, I'm going to talk about forensics in AWS, and I know how to talk about that, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of go for the person who is saying, do you fixate on speaking later that day and struggle to get anything done? No, because I pretend like I'm not even speaking. Like it's bad in the sense that half the time I like literally woke up today and looked at my calendar and was like, oh crap, I'm speaking later today. Like I gotta remember that, set alarm, because like I purposely try not to focus on it, because if I focus on it, I overthink. I think of it as when I was in college, it'd be exam day and I'd go into the class and every single student was nose in textbook on the subject matter we about to test on. And I'm like, if you didn't know it going 5 minutes leading up to the talk, you're not going to know it now. Same thing. If it's an hour before the talk and I'm actually not ready, I'm probably not going to be ready in an hour. So I got to believe that I'm ready, in which case there's no point in sitting around and stressing about it.
Yeah, Stacy, you kind of mentioned that, you know, I have this plan in case my mind just goes blank in the middle of a presentation, but Carmenella was actually asking in the Slack, how do you deal with that? If your mind goes blank, if something goes wrong during the presentation, you just forget the whole word that you were going to use. Do you have any strategies, or have you had that happen and had to overcome it?
Oh, yes. So as I said, I will always fall back on humor. If I forget something, I will do something that's kind of a visual gag, or I will make a joke about it. It's just like earlier when I started, I was talking too fast. I got excited and I tripped over my words. And then it was like, ugh. You know, you just kind of have to give yourself a moment, laugh at yourself a little bit. And, you know, it could be just as much as saying, you know, to a crowd of people, all right, just give me a moment. I have to reset, or something like that. And then allow yourself that time and that sort of joke to move forward. At least that's how I handle it, because I feel like that is more personable and relatable. And people do understand that, look, if you're presenting in front of a lot of people, it's not always going to go as smoothly as you'd like. And, you know, having that little bit of, you know, just sort of jiving with yourself can help alleviate that. And it's memorable too, I think, in so many ways.
So doing what I do here at SANS, I work with speakers all the time, hundreds of speakers every year. And so we get first timers. We love first time speakers. We get people who are very, very nervous. And I have found that if somebody goes up on stage and they say, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, or this is the first time I've ever done an in-person presentation, the audience just kind of embraces that. And Brandon, you had a thought about that earlier in Slack when we were chatting about how people feel about you as a speaker and your nervousness.
Yeah, it's really important for folks to understand that 100% of the time, you are doing better than you think you're doing in public speaking. And this isn't even just a disconnection between your perception of yourself and reality. It's actually that they want you to succeed so much because your incentives are aligned. If you do a job that they thought was bad, they've wasted their time going to that presentation. So they are actively trying to find value in your speech, which means that they are going to be so forgiving of some of the mistakes that you make. They're going to completely push that to the side because they want to get solid content out of that. And if you know your stuff, you're going to give them that content. So always believe that you're doing better than you are, because it's 100% true.
And like you said, the audience wants you to succeed. People love to be at a presentation where somebody starts out saying, I'm so nervous, or I've never done this before, and then absolutely slays the presentation. It makes you as an audience member feel special. Like, I got to be part of that. I got to support that person. And it's really great. However, some of us have the opposite problem. So if you had looked at the agenda before, I wasn't originally going to be the moderator. But then when we did our prep call, I realized we could all get so excited and talk about this for like the next 4 hours. And so maybe it's better if we have somebody whose official job is to keep time. So for any of the three of you, somebody was asking in the Zoom, when you get really excited, especially if you're talking about something that you love and you find yourself kind of stumbling over your words and getting overly excited during your presentation, or if you just get so into what you're doing that you lose track of time. Do you have any strategies for that, kind of reeling yourself back in when you get too into your presentation?
I can start.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So whenever I will present or I'll talk on something, whenever it comes to a presentation, I know that there's that invisible structure. I know that I'm time bound. There are times whenever I do prepare for a presentation where I will practice it. If I have a PowerPoint or something like that, I see how long it takes me to do it. I see where I'm at with each slide or how long I take per slide. And I try to take like a mental index of that. In terms of if I don't have something like that in front of me, or if I don't have a way to actually physically keep time, I will try to ask myself, or have a watch on or something like that. Or when I'm talking about a topic, I'll ask myself, is this enough? And if I say no, I'll keep going a little bit. And each time I create a new point, I'll ask, is this enough? Do I need to move on to the next thing? And it's kind of just creating this, these different stair steps to get to where you want to be. And if you do structure it in the context of a story, you can also ask yourself, where's my beginning, where's my middle, and where's my end? And how close am I to that end?
Yeah, so Megan and I are the winging it types, but Brandon, this question might be for you. Somebody asked in the Slack, do you have a checklist? So beyond just kind of scripting your talk down to the punctuation, do you have a checklist that you use each time?
Not really. And I think the reason why that is that the process of preparing for the talk, the process of scripting out my talk gives me the confidence and understanding of what I want to cover in the first place. It's kind of comparable, I think, to actually taking a GIAC exam, right? When you take a GIAC exam beforehand, you typically make an index. And the process of creating that index is so useful in terms of learning the material that sometimes people end up not actually using the index once they get to the exam. They've internalized so much of the content by just preparing. So that's kind of where I'm at with my preparation. I think naturally the points come together, and I would err on the side of explaining more, not less, because if you think this is a useful talking point, then it's probably useful to someone. So as long as you've rehearsed the talk a couple of times, then, and you know you're not grotesquely over time, you're probably okay. And you can always adjust in the middle of the talk as well.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left until we go into our break and then come back for the second half of our event. So I want to give each of you a minute or so to just wrap up. Like, what are your takeaways? What are the things that you hope anybody who's joined us today will leave here knowing? And I will go Stacey, Megan, Brandon.
Oh, yeah. If I had to give at least 3 takeaways, because triangles are powerful and the rule of threes, when it comes to art, I would say, we can see it here. We're all a little bit different. We all have different approaches, and everyone is going to be a little bit different. Make sure to do what makes you feel comfortable and confident, whatever that is, whether it's prep before, whether it's acting a certain way during, what that might be, what that looks like for you is what's paramount. The second thing is everyone can present. And as we talked about, some do it more naturally than others, but if you train and you practice and you work toward it, you can get on a stage just like the rest of us here. You deserve to be heard is my third and final takeaway. So do not forget that. If you have something that you want to talk about, you deserve to be heard.
Cool. Well, I'll continue with the rule of threes and give my top 3. My number 1 would probably be go into a talk with the mindset that if one person takes something away, is worth your time. Honestly, if you're in a room full of 50 people, there's going to be a part of the audience who either decided they weren't really interested or they already knew everything. But as long as there's one person who made it worth your time, like, it was a success. As long as one person came up to me and said, thank you, that was a great talk, I'm pleased. I don't care what the rest of the room thinks. 2, I'd say, and I'll half answer Abigail's question about brain blanks in this, is the audience does not know what you were intending to present going into the presentation. This is something I'm still working on myself, teaching SANS content, is if I forgot what I was going to say, or there's something on the slide and I don't even know why it was on what I was meaning to speak about with that, just move on, pass over it. They're not going to be like, excuse me, you didn't say anything about XYZ. They're here to hear what you have to say. So just when your brain blanks, move on to what you are ready to talk about. And 3, man, I had a list and then I got one of those brain blanks. 3, I'd say take any opportunities you can. So take small ones if you need to. Like, I run a lunch and learn at work. I'm always encouraging people. They'll be like, oh, but I've never given a presentation. I'm like, cool, then 20 coworkers on a Friday afternoon, WebEx should be easy. So look for those opportunities, local meetups, things like that. Anything you can do to just start practicing, and take it and don't worry about it. Go on a small platform. Okay, maybe that one meetup in town, you're worried about what they'll think of you after. That's 20 friends you might lose, but most likely you're going to gain 20 friends after it. So take the opportunities, run with it.
So I needed to have 3 points in order to close this out. I only had 1. So in the theme of this, I started typing out the other 2 thoughts, and now I feel prepared enough that I could probably just glance over it and know what I'm supposed to say. The first thing is just the value of public speaking and teaching. Those skills have been the number 1 skill that I've learned in my career. It's been so rewarding, both for advancement as well as fulfillment. I highly recommend that you give it a shot, even if you think that you're predisposed to not be good at it, because I bet you're going to do a lot better than you expected. And also you're going to have a lot of fun with it. And that'll get to my third point in a second. But secondly is, if you're nervous and you have some experience as a public speaker, try to think empirically. So looking at the past, looking at history. Have I done this before? Yes. Did I do well? Yes. Is there something catastrophically different about today that would make me do much worse than I did last time? No? Okay, that probably means that I'm going to do a great job. And finally is have fun with it. I was actually having a panic attack before one of my presentations, and someone just said, "Hey, Brandon, this is going to be fun. Have fun with it." And then immediately so much of my anxiety melted away because I realized that worst comes to worst, I don't convey the points I want to convey, but I had a really good time. And that in turn got my mood so up that I was able to do, I think, quite a good job. So I really appreciated that advice.